Now for the sharp edge on square cake. The cake has been trimmed. Remember, I've showed you in the previous video, and I've rolled out my fondant. Other fondants, I normally use my rolling pin to roll them and take it to the cake. But this one, I'm going to be showing you that you can actually roll it on your own. But don't do this when it is too big. I do this always when the cake I am covering is very small. Now start from the top part of the cake, remember, and then hold down the upper side of the cake first, making sure it's well lapped, as this is going to help the fondant rather, not to tear due to pressure. Now after doing this, you now gradually go down, opening as you lap on the body of the cake. Now this you will do until you go round, and after that you now use your smoother to help it the more, pressing down the fondant from up to down of the cake to make sure that it is completely and fully lapped. Now when you want to make this type of sharp edge on a square cake, you need patience. It is not something you just cover and it is ready. You really need patience to work on it. You can see I'm taking my time in order to achieve something better. Next, begin to push your fondant to be in line with the body. If you don't push it to be straight, that is to be in line with the body, by the time you flip it over to create your sharp edge, you will turn it back to notice that you have created some hole between the edge and the middle of the cake. So this is a very vital and a very important part of the whole thing. Now push them out, I repeat, okay, to make sure that it's in line with the body. For this is the most important part of your sharp edge on square cake. Now you can see that I'm using my double smoother to do that. Now the other one on the side is controlling the extent with which the upper one that is pushing will get to help it so that it will not push out so badly. So that one is suspending the excess push out of the fondant. Now, there is a very important notice you must be aware of. For me to work on this cake, I continuously apply my icing sugar. Take note, not corn flour. I continuously apply my icing sugar. Reason because I do not want the smoother to gum on the body of the cake. If that happens, it can end up pulling out the fondant on the body and tearing it. So this is exactly what I did on the side. Now I am using the two straight side of the smoother to cut off the edges. Now I do this first before I flip over the cake. And as you do that, make sure you remove all the fondant on the body of the smoother. Remember, as you're trying to cut off, some of them will stick to the smoother. If you don't, it will still make your cake to tear, because once it gums to the body of the cake, it will pull out the fondant and you will not get a neat job. So you can see what I'm doing. When I try to pull it out, I'm not doing it by force, please. I am not doing it in a way that I had to push once. I am taking my time, shifting it a little gradually in order to get enough that I can cut to create the sharpness. And remember, always apply your icing sugar. Now this is exactly what I'm going to be doing to get all the 4 corners. Another method, you can use the curve part to pull together the sides if you don't want to use the sharp side immediately. I'm going to be demonstrating that later. Now you have to continue. If you cut it didn't work, you cut again until it works. And always remove the fondant from your smoother. Now look at it. I'm using the other curve part to bring them together. Then when I want to cut it, I will now use the straight part to cut off the edge by rubbing both of them together. So I want to cut now. That is it. Like I said, you must be mindful of what you are doing. Be very careful with it. There is a way you place your hand and cut. You go and start covering the fondant from beginning. And I know you wouldn't want such thing to happen. So I'm using the side of the smoother now to cut. But I want you to know that after doing this, I will still use my craft knife to cut again to make it look more fine and more beautiful. This is actually another method of trimming your cake using your side of the smoother. But I hardly tell the beginners this so that they will not, on the process of mounting pressure, break their smoother. It is something you do carefully. You don't fight with it if you want to use the side to trim off the excess. So now after that, the next thing we are going to be doing is to flip over the cake so that you will be able to create the sharp edge at the top part of it. Now remember, I'm still using my craft knife to create more neatness on the side of the cake by trimming again. This is done after using the side of the smoother. The smoother won't give me a very sharp look, but the craft knife will. Now, another thing you must do before flipping over is to push out the edges. This time I am going to be creating a kind of excess fondant on the top side, which is also going to help me to create my sharp edge by the time I flip it over. Now this excess is going to be a little bit bigger than the body of the cake, as I'm going to be using that place as a base when I start creating the sharp edge. Now after creating this excess, I am going to be using my smoother to just smoothen the up, make it flat before flipping over. Now I'm trying to bring out a kind of, I don't know how to put it for you to understand, a kind of extra fondant out of the mouth, as if I'm covering a circle cake. Remember how I normally open the mouth of the circle cake to flip over before trimming out the excess? That's exactly what I'm trying to create on my square cake. So you can see that the upper side is now bigger than the body. Now you apply your icing sugar very well, generously, and then place your board and flip over to do the final one. Now those sides that I shoot out a little are going to help me to create the edge. So what I'm now doing is to make sure I line it very flat on the board, so that when I cut, it will give me a very sharp edge. What I'm doing is using my smoother to, lap it very well on the board. As I'm turning it, I believe you're seeing it. I've not started using the craft knife yet. So now use your craft knife and then remove all the excess. Now after that, you use your smoother. Remember, when I cover the circle cake, I normally use my smoother to go around it. That's the final thing I normally do before I flip over. The same thing I'm going to do on the body of this square cake. Now I have applied my icing sugar very well. I am now going to use my smoother to rub, but this time I am not going to be going around, as this is 4 corner. I'm going to take it side by side, one at a time. This is normally the final stage of my sharp edge. Now the next thing you are going to do is to apply your butter. But when I wanted to apply the butter, I noticed that the bottom part of the cake was protruding up. And if I turn it like that, what you are going to get, the middle of the cake will be up. On top, the upper part of the cake will come up. It will protrude up while the sharp edge will go down a little. But I don't want this to happen. So I'm going to trim off the excess cake at the bottom of the cake, so that I'll be sure that by the time I flip over, everything will be on the level. Next, clean up all the crumbs. Just do this, don't be afraid that the cake will be dirty. No, it will not. Clean up all the crumbs before flipping over. Next, place your board. As this is not the board I am going to be using to complete the cake, I don't need to apply my butter. Okay, I'm going to move the cake from this board to a circle board where I will finally finish up the cake. So you can see that even when I flipped back, I tried to make sure that even the downside of it is very neat. If it is not, just use your smoother, bring it down and then trim out the excess. Now you can see the cake is ready. The next thing, you transfer it to the board where you are going to be doing the finishing. For the decoration of this cake, I am only going to teach you in this video how you can decorate the board using your crimpers. Now, after making a sausage, a kind of a long sausage, all you need to do, that is sausage roll, you are rolling a sausage. All you need to do is you open it up using your rolling pin, but this time go in a slanty way, not going straight, so that it will be widely open. Now cut off one side. Now cut off one side. That is making sure that that side is straight. Now if you cannot cut straight line, use your long scraper to do this. So I've gotten my straight line. So all I need to do now is to roll. Now roll the fondant for it to be ready for placing on the board. Now apply your shortening or maybe a little liquid before placing it. This time I am going round. It is not always easy to go round when the cake is square. Just use wisdom to do this. Now after covering, use your smoother to go round in order for it to lap well on the board. And after that, you trim the edges of the board. Now I'm using my smoother to cover up the lines, because I wouldn't want the line to be there, although I'm going to be using something to design it. Now, after trimming, you now use your crimpers. This is what I call crimpers. It's always in the market. And then you can see there is one round black kind of rope that is holding it. That round thing there is what is controlling the movement of the mouth. That is, if you want it to be wider, you shift it in. You want it to be smaller, you shift it out before using it. So I'm going to be using it to be pinching together the fondant on the board until I go round. Remember, you still need patience to do this. So you can see this is a pinch I'm going to do until I complete it. So that's actually another way of decorating your board. You can do embossment. You can use cutters to emboss on the body. You can do anything. I've already showed you how to use your skewer or your dowel rod. Anything at all is allowed, as long as it will make your board beautiful. Now you can see how beautiful everything turned out to be. In the next video, we are going to be decorating the cake using sugar sheet. See you in the next class.